I want to start a worm bin. I've been watching YouTube videos, I've been doing research, I've been doing reviews, trying to find what bin to choose. So far, most of the reviews seem to be good, so I'm confused. How do I know which bin to choose? Hi, I'm Whitey Davy. In today's video, we are going to be looking at factors that you should consider when you're choosing a worm bin so that you can choose the bin that is right for you. So in the introduction, you see the challenge that a lot of people or gardeners who want to become worm farmers face. They wonder what bin to choose, and when they go on social media and they pose the question, each reply that they get is based on the experience that that replier had. So is it really based on someone else's experience that we're going to be choosing a worm bin? What are the factors that determine the type of worm bins that we have or that we choose? Okay, so there are three main things that you need to consider, which is the size, maintenance, and harvesting. Now we're going to break down these into different sections. So let's start first by looking at the size of your bin. When you're choosing the size of your bin, something that you need to consider is your ability to lift. So if you have a worm bin that you're going to have to lift frequently, whenever you're maintaining it or you're harvesting from it, if you have to lift your worm bin, consider, what is my health or my physical fitness like? Worm bins can be quite heavy. So do I have the ability to lift a large worm bin? Or would a stackable worm bin work better for me? Not just your physical capabilities now, but in the next 5 or 10 years, based on the trajectory of your health now, in the next 5 or 10 years, will you be able to lift the same bin? You may want to keep that in mind. Next, we look at location. Where is the bin going to be located? Is it going to be indoors or outdoors? Is it going to, if it's going to be indoors, is it something that visitors are going to be able to see when they enter my premises? And if so, then you need to ensure that whatever bin you're choosing is aesthetically pleasing to the eyes, because you don't want people to leave your home with a negative view of you, right? Okay, so the aesthetic part of it is important. Also, the amount of space that you have to store your worm bin. So for some of us, we may live in apartments, some of us may live in our own houses, some of us may have a basement that we're not using, some of us may only have our kitchen space, and so we can only put a worm bin underneath our sink. So therefore the size matter, the appearance of your bin matter, and is it something that you can cover properly so that you can reduce the chances of fruit flies and other pests getting in? If your bin is going to be outdoors, does it have the proper cover so that you can keep rodents, roaches, and other pests out? So these are some of the factors that you need to consider. Next, let's look at maintaining your bin. For a lot of us, especially in recent times, older ones are getting into gardening after retirement as something to keep them occupied, and because it is therapeutic as well, and as old age set in and the challenges of getting older becomes more of a problem, then gardening is a good therapy for them, and so they want to have a worm farm as well. Now, whatever the reason is, maintenance is something you have to keep in mind. When you're maintaining your bin, are you better or more comfortable with standing and maintaining your bin? Are you more comfortable with sitting and maintaining your bin, or stooping to look after your bin? Which would you be more comfortable with? Because that is going to determine the type of bin that you choose. Next, let's look at harvesting. Depending on the type of bin that you have, you may have to lift it, as we mentioned before, or you may have to stand or stoop or sit to look after the bin. And that can be quite tedious, especially if you have a bin that you have to be bending over to maintain. That can be quite tedious. So then the next question is, when you are choosing your bin, are you going to go with castings, a type of bin that you have to sift your castings, or will you choose a type of bin, a CFT bin, continuous flow through bin, that allows you to harvest the casting without having to affect the worms and the unfinished products in your worm bin? So CFT, as I said before, is continuous flow through. What it does is allow you to harvest from the bottom of your bin, and you don't have to affect what is on the surface of the bin. So these are some things that you need to consider. So do you want castings that you have to sieve, or is it that your circumstances allow you to simply feed your worms, make sure they have moisture and air, but you don't really have a lot of time to look after your worms? And so you want to make your worm farming process as simple as possible. If that is the case, then you might want to consider the type of worm bin where you don't have to sift your castings after, which would be a CFT. Now there are various types of CFT. Now there is one particular company that I really appreciate. I don't use their products, not because there is something wrong with it. I don't use their products because I'm a commercial worm farmer, and the products that they have doesn't really align with my choice of business. So what I like about them though is that they make various types of worm bins. So they make worm bins to suit every type of situation. And this, what I like about them is that they have worm bin designed for drier regions. So if you live in places like the desert or other areas where you don't have a lot of moisture, the air is dry, then they have worm bins designed for that. If you live in moisture area, they have worm bins designed for that. So for the dry area, the worm bins are designed to retain moisture. For the moist area, the worm bin is designed to allow moisture to evaporate. Now, they have various styles of worm bin. As I mentioned before, they have CFT, they have tote style, they have so many. I like that they have a lot of different accessories that you can use with your worm farm. You can custom order your worm bin. Can you imagine that? You are able to custom order your worm bin. That is something that I really like. And then their worm bins are easy to harvest. They have worm bins that you can harvest and sift. They have the CFT where you can just harvest and you don't necessarily have to sift your castings. Now, mark you, I keep mentioning sifting and CFT. Sometimes you may need to sift when you use the CFT, depending on how much time you allow for that castings or that food scraps to be processed, where it is all the section that you harvest is all castings and very little food scraps. Now for some people, they don't really care about whether or not they have to harvest or whether or not there is food particles or food scraps in their castings, because they're just using it in their garden, so it doesn't really matter to them. For some, they don't mind if some of their worms end up in the garden, so that then if that is the case, you don't necessarily have to sift. So the next advantage of this company is that the worm bins are designed at different height. Some of them you can build stand for them. Some of them you can just simply keep in a corner on the floor. They even have worm bins for commercial purposes too. So that is good. Now they also have worm bins that can be kept indoors, and they have worm bins that can be kept outdoors. So I'm going to be putting a link in the description that you can use to access these worm bins if you're interested. So you can take a look at their website and see the various type of bin that they offer and see which of their bins align with your circumstances so that you can choose what's right for you. Now, whether or not you are going to be going on this website to find your worm bin, or you're gonna go somewhere else. That is entirely up to you. But when you're choosing your worm bin, you need to consider these factors that we mentioned before. Okay, so that will help you to choose a worm bin that is best for you, not something that is generic. Okay, so if you enjoy this video and you would like to see more videos like these, please take a moment to give me a thumbs up. If you know of others who are interested in getting worm bins but they are struggling, you can share this video with them. You can leave a comment in the section below. So thank you for watching, and I hope you have yourself a wonderful day. Yeah man, time for grow.